Hello, my name is Matthew Clywett. I'm one of your Indigenous high school graduation coaches, and I am the son of a residential school survivor. Today, we remember residential school survivors. We remember the children who never made it home, their families, and the legacy that this has left us with. I struggle every year with how to do this day justice, with how to be authentic in how I deliver this message. Because the students who went to residential school didn't look like me, and they didn't sound like me. And I encourage you to learn more than what we have here, and to listen to more voices than mine. Now, most of you listening to me now are under 18. And you might be thinking, I don't have many rights. Well, you do have some rights. You have the right to your safety. You have the right to a quality education. And you have the right to your dignity and to be who you are. And today we remember that hasn't always been the case. In the front entryway to the school, you'll see a mural with a large collection of orange shirts. These are messages of hope and encouragement by Queenie's staff. The kinds of messages of hope and encouragement that residential school students never would have heard. And following my remarks, there will be messages from a few of us here at the school that these students also wouldn't have heard. After these messages, we will observe a moment of silence. And I encourage you to remember that though Thursday is a day off school, it is not a holiday. This is a day to reflect. And with that, we'll have the first of these messages.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here as we commemorate Canada's first day of truth and reconciliation. I also want to thank you for wearing orange in remembrance of this day. I think all of this week we've been imploring you to think about history, and certainly Matthew and Jess on the Night's Watch have given us a little bit of background about Orange Shirt Day. I will tell you that I've been very fortunate in my time as a principal that I've had time to sit down with survivors of our residential school, shameful legacy of residential schools, and hear their stories. I've also read very widely in this area, and that's certainly been helpful in terms of me understanding this legacy that comes with being a part of Canada. It's important, and I think that we've all probably heard at some point the phrase that those who don't know history are doomed to repeat it. I think that is very much a part of what we are doing today and as we move forward this week. But I also want to caution us that that is not all. So certainly knowing history is important, but I will tell you that when we look back in history at some of the most deplorable, awful instances, they were sometimes committed by people who are highly educated, who understood history very well. Knowing our history, knowing what happened is a part, but it's not the only piece. The big piece that is often missing is the ability to listen and to open our hearts with empathy for other stories. Too often in our world, and certainly our world right now, is more polarized than it has ever been. And it's that kind of polarization that often leads us in silos and stops us from seeing the true humanity of people. The good news is that your generation is one of hope, more hope than ever. On this first National Day of Reconciliation, it is your generation that is going to bring us through. It is your generation that is going to help us see how having empathy and understanding another person's perspective will make a difference. That is how we will move forward. My friends, I hope you listen with open hearts and minds to some of the stories that follow. Thank you so much.
Truth and Reconciliation Day on September 30th opens the door to a conversation on all aspects of residential schools. It's an opportunity for us to create meaningful discussion about the effects of residential schools and also the legacy left behind. You're going to hear a little bit more today about people talking about the history and all the different aspects of what reconciliation means, and also some personal experiences. And this date was chosen because this is the time of year when children are taken away from their homes to residential schools. And it also sets the opportunity for us to set the stage for anti-racism and anti-bullying for the coming school year. I love that Mr. McEwen spoke about hope, because that's my word. My word of the year is hope. And here at Queenie, we commit to action, and to active allyship. As we are living on Treaty 6 land and we are all treaty people, and Treaty 6 signifies the ongoing agreement and relationship among treaty people because we're all living here together on this land. And at Queenie, we hope that you all have a safe place to be, free from discrimination, prejudice, and racism. And we continue to educate staff and students about anti-racism. You're going to hear a little bit about Phyllis Webstad and how her grandmother gave her this orange shirt, and how she spoke about how her feelings didn't matter and no one cared for her and she felt like that she didn't matter. And reading about Phyllis Webstad and learning more every year about residential schools, my hope is that all of you will feel cared about and that you'll know your worth and that you all matter. You matter, we matter, and again, we will all remember residential schools.
Wade Wahwadep, Phyllis Webstad, Rensquest, Stracham Chatstam Stlakwan. I am speaking to you today from Shawetmach Ulach, the land of the Shuswap people in Williams Lake, BC. I am third generation Indian residential school survivor. My grandmother attended for 10 years from 1925 to 1935. All of Granny's 10 children, including my mother, attended for 10 years from 1954 to 1964. I attended residential school in 1973-74. We all attended the St. Joseph Mission Indian Residential School, simply called the Mission, located just minutes from Williams Lake. My son also attended the last operating residential school in Canada when it closed in Saskatchewan in 1996. To tell my story, I was living with my granny as a child, and when I turned 6 in July of 1973, Granny took me to town to buy me something new to wear for my first day of residential school. I chose a shiny new shirt. It was bright and exciting, just how I felt to be going to school for the first time. When I arrived at the Mission, my shiny new shirt was taken away. No matter how much I cried and wanted it back, no one would listen. I never wore my shirt again. Thoughts of home and Granny's garden, fishing for salmon on the Fraser River, are all memories that helped me through that year at residential school. Although the Mission remained open until 1981, I never returned. I was able to attend a one-room schoolhouse just minutes from Granny's house in Dog Creek. The memories of that orange shirt being taken away and the lack of caring by those who controlled us kept me from wearing orange for a long time in my life, as the sight of orange would trigger memories of my experiences and the effects of my life from attendance at that school. I told my orange shirt story for the first time in April 2013, when preparation for when the Truth and Reconciliation Commission came to Williams Lake. Those involved with the event decided to honor the orange shirt as a symbol of the effects of residential schools and the need for every child matters. Originally, Orange Shirt Day was focused on the Caribou-Chilcotin region, but thanks to social media, it continues to grow and have a life of its own, and has grown into what it is today. My orange shirt story is not unique. There were 150,000 children that attended the residential schools across Canada, and they, or their families, all have a story to tell of that experience. And now, with the recent news of the confirmation of the 215 children announced at the Kamloops de Shawetmach on May 27, 2021, another experience from those schools is brought forward. I, like many Canadians, have felt the emotional impact of those findings. But for the survivors, we have always known about the children who died in those schools. This is why I say confirmation instead of discovery. Even so, when I first heard, I felt like I had lost a family member, and that's how much grief I felt. There are many more residential school sites to be searched, and the number of missing children and unmarked burials will continue to rise. I'm still grappling for a way to make sense of it all and wondering how we are going to get through this. My thoughts and prayers go out to the families, to everyone across Canada experiencing this unimaginable emotional pain. The missing children have awakened all of us to the reality of the history of this country. This year marks the first year of a National Day for Truth and Reconciliation and National Federal Statutory Holiday on September 30th. A day for thoughts and discussions on remembering, recovering, and reconciling. Orange Shirt Day is a day to have conversation about all aspects of residential school. It is a day to honor residential school survivors and their families, and to remember those that didn't make it. And a day to highlight progress in the reconciliation of Indigenous people and Canadian society. These actions are necessary to bring about healing for the future relationship in Canada. We chose September 30th because September is the time of year the children were taken away from their homes and their families. We chose the 30th because we wanted teachers and students time to settle in, time for teachers to teach students about the history, and time for us to plan an event. When I heard an elder say that September was Crying Month, I knew that we had selected the right date. The Orange Shirt Society has produced a number of videos available on our website for the purpose of teaching the past history and bringing understanding of the Canadian residential school system and its effects on Indigenous peoples. We encourage all to learn more of this subject. In closing, I want to thank everyone for participating in Orange Shirt Day and wearing an orange shirt. When you wear an orange shirt, it's like a little bit of justice for us survivors in our lifetime, and recognition of a system we can never allow again. I want to end with a prayer I wrote in my Secwepemc language. Kia el chba'a, de geld gukbi, gukstach guch pin de sietk, gukstach guch de juchinuch, gukstach guch de stietlen, el de saulqua, el de soep, el de griselksten, gukstach guch chuchweidep, jucheminta ra chuchweid de galmuch de chwaset. Gukstjam, thank you for caring about what happened to us, and thank you for participating in Orange Shirt Day, the first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation in Canada. Gukstjam.
I believe that truth and reconciliation starts with the people of Canada. It starts with non-Indigenous folks standing in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. Reconciliation must be accompanied with action. Actions that show allyship, empathy, and compassion. On this day, we acknowledge and remember the cultural genocide perpetuated by the residential schooling system. Today, we think about the survivors of these places that were once called schools. We think about the children who died and the unmarked graves. I encourage everyone to take a moment to pause and reflect about your role and responsibility in honoring reconciliation today. Hi.
Hi, my name is Najra Hall, a social studies teacher here at Queen Elizabeth High School and a settler living on Treaty 6 territory. The past couple of days, our school has been recognizing and remembering the thousands of children that were forcibly taken away from their homes across Canada. Colonization in Canada did not happen hundreds of years ago. Therefore, Indigenous people are still healing and dealing with the effects of these oppressive and discriminatory policies set in place by the Canadian government. From a settler's perspective, someone who is not Indigenous, one might question what is my role in reconciliation, and personally for me, that place begins with being an Indigenous ally. Larissa Crawford, an Afro-Indigenous activist and educator, defines ally as not a word but as an action. So take action today. Do not wait until tomorrow and continue to reflect on the things that you have learned throughout this week. Listen to our Indigenous elders, research about the lands that you occupy, and challenge stereotypes that you have about Indigenous peoples.
Thank you. And thank all of you for your attention. We will now observe a moment of silence. If you are able, please rise. Thank you. This is the end of today's commemoration. I encourage you, though, to continue learning more, and I encourage you to be vigilant in the face of any injustice that you might see. We remember so that this doesn't happen again. I thank you all, and I return you to your classes. We at Queenie wish you all the best.